Have we started turning ourselves into our own God, not with statues, not with temples, but with image, ego, self-worship, and a culture that keeps telling people to put themselves where only God belongs? This video is not about healthy confidence. It is about self-exaltation. It is about a culture teaching people to build their image, protect their ego, chase attention, and slowly make themselves the center of meaning. This world keeps telling people, make yourself the brand, make yourself the truth, make yourself the answer, make yourself the center. But that is not freedom. That is misdirected worship.
You were never meant to worship yourself. You were never created to take the place of God in your own life. I am the Lord. That is my name, and my glory will I not give to another. That is Isaiah 42, verse 8. Glory was never meant to end with you. You were made to reflect God, not replace Him.
That first statement cuts straight across the spirit of this age, because modern culture constantly pulls people inward. How do I look? How am I perceived? How many people admire me? How much attention can I hold? How much of the room belongs to me? And one of the clearest modern descriptions of this culture called it a world of noisy narcissism. That is such a powerful phrase because it captures the atmosphere perfectly. The self is always on stage now, always performing, always curating, always trying to be admired. And this is not just a religious concern. Psychology writing has also pointed to social media as something linked with narcissistic traits and self-focused behavior. So when Jesus says you were never meant to worship yourself, that is not old-fashioned or irrelevant. It is a direct diagnosis of a modern sickness.
Pride will not free you. It will blind you. Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. That is Proverbs 16, verse 18. What feels like power can become the very thing that keeps you from truth, humility, and repentance.
Pride is one of the great deceptions of modern life, because pride no longer always looks loud. Sometimes it looks polished, sometimes it looks ambitious, sometimes it looks camera-ready, marketable, and socially rewarded. What used to look obviously arrogant can now be packaged as empowerment. But pride still does what pride has always done. It blinds people. It makes them hard to correct, hard to humble, hard to teach, hard to heal. A person can build an entire identity around appearing strong and still be deeply fragile inside. A person can be applauded by thousands and still be spiritually empty. A person can look powerful and still be completely disconnected from truth. And that is why this matters so much, because we live in a culture that keeps rewarding polished pride, not just loud pride, curated pride, branded pride, the kind of pride that calls itself confidence while quietly refusing humility. And if Jesus is right, then what many people call freedom is actually blindness dressed as power.
A polished image cannot heal an empty soul. Man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. That is 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. You may impress people with what is seen on the outside, but only truth in the heart can bring life.
That may be one of the most important lines for this generation, because so much of life now is built around image. Image online, image in public, image in business, image in relationships, image in church, image everywhere. People are spending huge amounts of energy building what they look like, how they appear, how they compare, and how they are perceived. But image can attract attention and still leave the soul starving. A person can look beautiful and still feel empty. A person can look admired and still feel insecure. A person can look successful and still be hollow inside. And that is the tragedy of self-worship. It teaches people to spend more time creating the appearance of life than actually receiving life from God. That is why a polished exterior can never be enough, because what is broken in the soul cannot be healed by presentation.
If your worth depends on being seen, your soul will never rest. Take heed that ye do not your alms before men, to be seen of them. That is Matthew 6, verse 1. When your heart depends on applause, approval, or attention, peace will always stay just beyond your reach.
This is where the issue becomes deeply personal, because so many people now build their worth on visibility. They want to be seen, validated, affirmed, admired, celebrated, and when that becomes the place where worth lives, the soul becomes restless. Being watched is not the same as being loved. Being followed is not the same as being known. Being praised is not the same as being whole. And this gets even deeper when you look at modern spirituality. A huge number of people still describe themselves as spiritual, but many increasingly want spirituality without surrender, without authority, without repentance, and without God truly at the center. They want transcendence without submission, meaning without obedience, comfort without truth, and that is where self becomes dangerous. Because once the self becomes the final authority, spirituality can slowly turn into another form of self-devotion.
When you replace God with yourself, you do not become greater. You become lost, who changed the truth of God into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator. That is Romans 1, verse 25. The human heart was never designed to carry the weight of being its own God.
And that is the deepest danger of all. Not just vanity, not just narcissism, not just ego, replacement, replacing reverence with self-reference, replacing surrender with self-rule, replacing worship with self-devotion, replacing God with the self. And once that happens, the human heart starts carrying a weight it was never designed to carry, because no human being was made to be their own God. No human being was made to be the center of ultimate meaning. No human being was made to carry the throne of God on their own shoulders. That is why self-worship eventually crushes people. It promises enlargement, but produces emptiness. It promises freedom, but produces pressure. It promises power, but produces instability. So the real question is not simply whether someone says they believe in God. The real question is whether, in practice, they have replaced Him with themselves. Have they made the self the final truth, the final authority, the final object of devotion, the final center of meaning? Because once that happens, the soul begins drifting into idolatry, even if the person never calls it that. So what would Jesus say about people turning themselves into their own God? He would say, you were never meant to worship yourself. And if that is true, then the answer is not more ego, not more performance, not more self-glorification. The answer is humility, truth, repentance, and putting God back in the place where only God belongs, because the human heart was never designed to carry the weight of being its own God. Lord, humble me.